Don't be stunted by your support. Don't be stunted by your support. That's the topic of today's video. My name's Ayin. Thank you for joining me here. When I think about this topic of don't be stunted by your support, I've covered similar topics on this channel before, but I wanted to approach this from a different angle. Think about rock climbers when they're scaling a rock. They have a support system in place. They have those harnesses or whatever they call them. I'm not a rock climber. And correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but aside from whatever harness or whatever that they're using, I think they have a backup. But first and foremost, they're relying on themselves to be able to scale these rocks. They're relying on themselves, and they have these backups just in case. It's the same thing when I'm thinking about a support system. What brought me to this topic of this video, don't be stunted by your supports, is that, before I clarify on this, we'll go back to the rock climbers for a moment. The reason why I said first and foremost they rely on their own strength, their arms and their legs to scale that rock, is because the things that they're using as a support is not to assist them in climbing the mountain, it's just in case they fall. They don't lose their lives or hurt themselves. But ultimately, the verticality that they're getting from climbing is coming from them. Now, I want to take this over to your support system, your supports. The reason why I say don't be stunted by your supports. It should be the same way with your inner circle and the people who support you in your life, even the people that extend to the outer circle. You're ultimately the driver, and you're making the decisions in your life. You're making the judgment calls for better or worse. Sometimes we rely on people in our circle when we're seeking counsel or guidance on something. And it's nothing wrong with that per se. But where this can become a problem, because we're all imperfect, is that, you heard me say this before, not everybody is 100% all the time. You're just not. And since we're all capable of being imperfect, things can creep in there. Envy, jealousy, a host of other things. And if you're totally relying on your support and you're not using your own arms and your legs to scale that mountain, and you're relying on your support, then you wouldn't go anywhere. Because just as in that analogy that I used about having that backup harness and whatever else, whether if they're climbing with another climber, they're attached to them, you couldn't rely on the harness to hoist you up the mountain. It's only there as a backup. Ultimately, the real work comes down to you. And even at that, you're not going to jump into it cold. It would be some conditioning. Imagine me trying to, I've never scaled a mountain. I've never done any rock climbing. Imagine me trying to just go out and do this just off the cuff. I'd probably make it about 4 feet. It'd be hardly considered climbing a mountain. It's the same way that we have to operate when we think about the steps that we take in our life. Think about it. If you refuse to use your own brain, use your own effort, your own arms and legs to climb whatever obstacle that is before you, if you refuse to do that and you solely rely on the others that's around you, you'll be limited by their thoughts, their emotions, how far they're willing to take you, if they're willing to take you anywhere. That's if they're dealing with you authentically. And some of that jealousy, some of that envy is not creeping in there. The reason why I want to shed another light on this is because I've thought about times in my life where I've experienced, I've witnessed, where people that you have in your life, whether they're mentors or people that you're just seeking counsel from, depending on how long they're there and what things you bring to them on the table, they start thinking that they have a say-so in the calls that you should be making. And if they don't think that they have a say-so in the calls and the things that you should be doing, then they'll definitely let it be known. because you can come off as being incapable of making your own decisions, therefore stunting your growth, the topic of this video. You have to have confidence in the things that you're doing. If you don't know how you need to go about doing whatever it is that you need to do or what you need to do your research. More research than just trying to cut corners and just ask people up on things. Do your research so you can get an unfiltered view on whatever it is that you're needing to do. I don't know how many times I've had people weigh in on things that I'm doing or things that I may be exploring, and I didn't even ask for the input. And what's so funny about it is the input that they were giving me, I could already tell was skewed. It was coming from a place of somewhat being malicious. So I knew what was garbage and what was to toss out the window and what was of value. In those instances of what I'm referring to, it was garbage. It was tossing out the window. It wasn't even constructive criticism. So it wasn't even anything healthy up about it. I had to write it off and move on. I didn't want to dwell on it because I didn't want to waste time. So I just wanted to make sure that this is something that you're not doing. Make sure that you're not being stunted by your support system. They're there to support you. One last thing before I close out this video. We want to realize that no matter how tall we feel that others are standing or we're all standing on one leg. Today I might be standing tall and you're leaning on me. Tomorrow you may be standing tall and I'm leaning on you. Meaning, before I close out this video, meaning that even you relying on someone to support you all the time may get old. I've experienced that as well. Maybe you really valued some insight on something, and maybe you were just, maybe you and this other person were at a miss for you when you were seeking counsel, and they got old. I've also seen it flip around too, where people have had like the haughty type attitude of, oh, well, you know, it's like I'm big brother seeking counsel up from me, and it's a haughtiness that comes with this. So you kind of experienced it all. So think about that too. Just, you know, relying on others, it's almost like asking to, you know, borrow something. It gets old. So keep that in mind too. That you're imperfect, dealing with imperfect. That's my take on it. If you have questions, send them to my Gmail, ayin.kilimanjaro@gmail.com. I'll do my best to answer your question in a video. Check out the book that I written, Ayin Kilimanjaro's The Arithmetic of Family Communication. I'll leave a link in the description box. That's it. Y'all have a good one. Stay encouraged. Avoid being discouraged. I'm Ayin. Y'all have a good one.